Hi, Miss Marion here. We're going to talk about absolute value equations. So I can solve single variable absolute value equations. Again, you will need no page from my Canvas page. You need to copy that down, you need to print it out. And then also you will also need your worksheet, which is the same as the Canvas assignment. So you can go ahead and have room to go ahead and do the questions, okay? So make sure you print those out and then come back to me. All right, let's talk about absolute value. Absolute value, the real question is, it's asking how many steps away from zero are you? So if we're thinking about steppage, okay? So if we sit there and we go, okay, let's ask about the absolute value of 5. How many steps away from zero? So if we look at a number line, how many steps are there? It is 5, right? Let's talk about -5. So if we do the absolute value of -5, okay, if we're taking from 0, it's also +5. Because remember, steps, you can't really take negative steps. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but you really cannot take negative steps. So the absolute value of -5 is also 5, okay? So keep this in mind while we're doing all of this. But we're going to be kind of looking into equations, okay? So the 3 steps that we're going to talk about is isolate, judge, split, okay? So these are the 3 things we need to go ahead and keep in mind while we're solving absolute value equations. So isolate, judge, split, okay? So write those down in the little steps, okay? And then we're going to refer back to it on our next example. So we have absolute value of a minus 80 equals 5. So first of all, is the absolute value isolated by itself? Is there nothing else outside of the absolute value that needs to be moved? Right now, that answer is no. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to judge the 5. And if it's a +5, then we can move on to the next step, which is split. Okay, so we have it as, so 1 is isolate, right? Yep, we did that. Number 2 is judge, okay? And again, who are we judging? We're judging that equal like the answer, okay? And if it's positive, then we can go down to the next one, which is split. And what does that mean? We're going to make 2 equations. We're going to make one equation exactly how it looks. And we're going to make the other equation with a negative answer on there, okay? So we have a minus 80 equals 5. So we write the equation exactly how it looks, and then we write the equation with a negative on the answer itself. And then what we do from here, we solve them, okay? So we want to get a by himself, so we're looking at this first one here, okay? We want to get a by himself. We have the -80, so how do we do that? We're going to add 80 to both sides of the equation. So we have a 80, -80, +80 makes 0. 5 plus 80 is 85. So this is one of our answers. Then we're going to do the other equation. So again, over here, we have a -80. So then we're going to add 80 to both sides. Okay, what is our answer? We're going to have a +80 goes away. -5 plus 80 is 75. So notice how we have 2 equations. Sometimes our numbers are the same. Sometimes, many of the times, our numbers are not the same, okay? As far as the answers. And it's not a positive and negative of each other. So notice how we have 85 and then we have 75. And then when you put this in Canvas, it's going to say, I want the smaller of the 2 numbers is in the first blank, and then the larger of the 2 numbers is in the second blank. You need to follow directions. You need to read the directions and follow it very, very carefully, or you're going to be marked wrong, okay? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So number 2, again, remember it's isolate. So is the absolute value isolated by itself? Yep, there's nothing else that needs to move. We're going to judge the number 4. Is it positive? Yep. Okay, now we can go ahead and we can do our split. We're going to write it exactly how it looks, and then with a negative itself. On these 2 equations, do we need to solve anything? Nope. We just have +4 and negative 4 as our answers. And again, you're going to put the smallest number in first, larger in after that. All right, example number 3. So is the absolute value, is it isolated by itself? Is there nothing outside of the absolute value that needs to move? Nope, there's nothing that needs to move, okay? So then we're going to judge the 30, okay? Is that a positive 30? Yep. Okay, we're going to move it down to the split. We're going to do negative 6x equals 30. Negative 6x. So notice how the inside of the absolute value stays exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the answer gets a negative 30. We're going to go ahead and we're going to divide by negative 6 on both sides. So we have x equals a negative 5. We're going to divide by negative 6 on both sides. We're going to have x equals negative 30 divided by negative 6 is positive 5. So again, these are our two answers for the absolute value stuff. All right, moving on. All right, ask yourself again, is the absolute value isolated by itself? Yep. Okay. We're judging the 14 is a positive. Yep. All right. Now we need to go ahead and we need to do the split. We're going to have w divided by 2 equals 14. W divided by 2 equals negative 14. The 2 is dividing, so we're going to multiply on both sides. So we're going to have w equals 14 times 2 is 28. Again, multiply by 2 on both sides. 2 divided by 2 is 1, leaves w by itself. And then we have negative 28. Remember, your smaller number goes in first in your Canvas stuff. All right, so let's look at this one. So again, first step is to isolate the absolute value by itself. Is the absolute value isolated? It is not. It has 7 on the outside. What is 7 an absolute value of y doing? They are multiplying. So we want to get rid of that 7, so we're going to divide. Okay, so we're going to divide by 7 on both sides. That leaves the absolute value of y. 56 divided by 7 is 8. Okay, so this is our, we're isolating the absolute value. Second step is to judge. We're judging the answer. Is the answer positive? Yes. So then we can go ahead and split. So we have y equals 8. Y equals the negative of the answer, which is 8. Do we need to solve these equations? Nope. It's already solved for y. So here are our two answers. All right. Let's ask about this. So is the absolute value, is it isolated by itself? Yep. There's nothing that needs to move. Okay. So is our 6, is it positive? Yes. Okay. So that is our judging. And then we need to go ahead and split. So we're going to write it exactly how it is. We have negative 4 plus 5x equals positive 6. And we have negative 4 plus 5x equals a negative 6. Let's go ahead and let's answer this. So we want to go ahead in the first equation, we want to go ahead and get 5x by themselves. So we have to move that negative 4. How do we move it? We're going to go ahead and add 4 to make a 0 to both sides of the equation. So then we have 5x equals, what is 6 plus 4? 6 plus 4 is 10. Okay, and then we want to go ahead and get x by himself. 5 and x, they are multiplying. So we are going to divide. 5 divided by 5 is x. 10 divided by 5 is 2. That's our first answer. Let's go ahead and answer the second one. So again, we want to get the 5x by itself. So we're going to add 4 to both sides. So we have 5x equals negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Then we have it where 5 and x, they are multiplying. So we are going to divide. So we have x equals negative 2 over 5. It does equal a decimal. It's better in Canvas as a fraction, so we're going to just leave it as negative 2 over 5. Notice how these are two different answers. It's not a positive and negative of 2, right? They're actually two different answers. You need to make sure that you solve each of those equations, because if not, you are going to get yourself in trouble. Okay, so make sure you go ahead and solve those. All right, moving on. Okay, let's ask ourselves, is the absolute value isolated by itself? Is there anything outside of the absolute value that needs to move? And that answer is yes. Who is it? Positive 5. Because it's positive, we are going to subtract 5 on both sides. Okay, so then we're going to have absolute value of 5x equals 45 minus 5 is 40. Now next step is to judge. Who are we judging? That positive 40. Is it positive? Yep. Then that means we can go ahead and do our split. We can do our two equations. 5x equals 40. 5x equals negative 40. And then we can go ahead and solve both of those equations. 5 is multiplying by x, so we are going to divide. 40 divided by 5 is 8. Same thing over here. We're going to divide by 5 on both sides of the equation. X is going to equal negative 8. So these are two answers that work for the absolute value. So I can take this answer and I can put it into the absolute value and it makes both sides true. All right, number 8, a little bit more extensive, okay? So we're going to go ahead and is the absolute value isolated by itself? No, it is not, okay? So we want to go ahead and we want to get that by itself. So remember, when we're solving equations, pretty much we're solving equations, but we have absolute value in the middle of it. We always do addition and subtraction first, okay? So I see a subtract 9. So that means I'm going to add 9 first to both sides of the equation. You might have to go ahead and pause this and rewind it a couple of times to make sure you understand. But again, we're doing the PEMDAS backwards. We're solving equations. And we always do addition and subtraction first, and then we do the multiplication and division. So we're going to say 57 plus 9. Okay, and that is 66. So then I have 6, absolute value, 1 minus 5x. Okay, now again, we need to isolate the absolute value. Is the absolute value isolated by itself? It is not. It has the 6 sitting right outside the absolute value. That is multiplication. So how do we get rid of the 6? We're going to divide. 6 divided by 6 leaves 1, or leaves the absolute value just sitting there by itself. 66 divided by 6 is 11. Now we go ahead and we're going to judge. We're going to judge that 11. Is that 11 positive? It is. So now we can split. We can go 1 minus 5x equals 11. 1 minus 5x equals negative 11. Starting with this equation here, we want to go ahead and get rid of that 1. That 1 is a positive 1. So we're going to subtract off 1. We're going to get negative 5x equals 10. Negative 5x and x, they are multiplying, so we are going to divide. So 10 divided by negative 5, our x is going to equal negative 2. That's our first, okay? Looking at the second equation, again, this is a positive 1, wants to be over here. So if it's a positive 1, let's do it in blue. We are going to subtract off 1 for both sides. We get negative 5x equals negative 12. We're going to divide by negative 5 on both sides. So negative 12 divided by negative 5. That we're going to get x equals is 2.4. And that's a positive 2.4. Notice how these two equations, these two answers are totally different. But again, we can take the negative 2 and put it into the equation. It makes both sides true or equal. We can put 2 into the equation. It also makes both sides equal or true. All right, let's look at example number 9. On example number 9, we're going to look at and go, okay, is the absolute value, is that isolated by itself? Yes, it is. And then now we want to go ahead and we want to judge this negative 2. If it's a negative 2, the answer is no solution. Okay, let's talk about that. What it's really asking is there a number that I can go ahead and put in there? Okay, so is there a number I can put into the absolute value? And eventually, if I take the absolute value, my final answer would be a negative 2. Can I take an absolute value of a number and will it ever be a negative number? Okay, so that's kind of like how many steps away from 0 are you? Can you be negative 2 steps away from 0? No, you can't. You can never take a negative 2 answer. So this is really, really kind of weird to understand. So you might want to have to like pause it, rewind it, and kind of go over it again. But really what it's asking is if I had a number to go ahead and put in there, and is there a number that I can put in there that the final answer would be a negative 2? The answer is no. It will never, ever, ever work. Because can we say, okay, can I take 2 times negative 4 plus 5, right? And if we were putting it here, and we're putting it in there, and we're like, okay, this is negative 8 plus 5. Negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3, okay? If I took the absolute value of negative 3, is that going to be negative 3? No, it can never be a negative 3. It always has to be positive. So if we look at this whole example here, and we have it as a -2 as the final answer, final answer. If I took the absolute value of something, can I ever have an answer of a negative? No, it doesn't work. So this is no solution. There's nothing I can put in there to make it so that if I take an absolute value of something, it's going to be negative. It doesn't work, okay? So no solution is our answer. All right, let's look at example number 10. First step is to look at it and go, okay, I need to isolate the absolute value by itself. Is there anything outside of the absolute value that needs to move? Yes, that's 20. Okay, so it's a positive 20. So I want to subtract off 20 from both sides of the equation. So I have absolute value 5x plus 10 equals, that makes it 0, right? And then 10 minus 20 is -10. So the absolute value, so we're going to isolate, right? Check. Okay, now we're going to judge. Who are we judging? We're judging that -10. So because it's negative, our answer is no solution. I cannot take an answer, I can't do an absolute value and get a negative answer. It just doesn't work. It's just no solution. All right, so these are our absolute value equations. Hopefully you understand them. We're going to be doing them today and also tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. Okay, so we're going to be doing them tomorrow also. So make sure you're getting into Canvas, but we're going to be doing absolute value equations and solving those. Okay, hope you have a good day. Thanks.